Welcome back, everybody. If you joined us last week on part one of this conversation with Alex Weghorn from Davidoff Cigars, if you didn't watch it, go back and start the episode. Enjoy part one, because in part two, we're going to continue the conversation on the development of flavor in cigars, and we're going to get into how cigars relate to the gentlemanly lifestyle. And we ultimately had to cut this one off because Alex and I could have talked for hours and hours and hours, and we'll probably schedule a follow-up. He's going to be back in the Philadelphia area in November, and we talked about maybe doing something in person with him down the road. So anyway, here's part two of my conversation with Alex Weghorn from Davidoff Cigars. Like and follow us, and remember to subscribe so you get the updates when these episodes are released. In the meantime, enjoy the conclusion of our conversation. Let's get into aging, because it's a perfect transition. You know, I talked about in that episode aging of whiskey, right? And what an age statement on a whiskey bottle means, being the youngest of the whiskeys in that, and then blending to achieve consistency. So what is aging in cigars? What does it do for the cigars? How is it done? What are they attempting to do? And then once it gets into the consumer's hand, what can they do to protect that or continue it?
Yeah, so there's two different styles of aging when it comes to cigars. You have the aging of the individual leaf, then you can have the aging of the cigars. So I would say it's a little bit more like the aging for spirits when it's the leaf by itself, because you have a climate-controlled area. They are sewn into smaller bales. They're definitely not as large as the pilones during fermentation. Also, I had mentioned earlier that fermentation needs that heat, humidity, and volume. So now you are going with much less volume in these smaller hand-sewn bales. Then you have a lot less heat. You're in a climate-controlled warehouse room, and the humidity is much, much lower. So you're taking away all the ingredients for fermentation, and now you're focusing more on that character development of the individual leaves. So these are where some of those more delicate and nuanced flavors really start to develop, and it takes a while to be able to do that, since there's a lot less activity than what's going on for fermentation. So now, instead of talking about fermentation in a time span of months, now you're talking about years for aging. And I mentioned earlier, you had asked about the average, the age of tobacco in a final cigar, and our average for the white bands being 5.5 years. The different tobaccos, depending on what the priming was, what that grade is considered post-fermentation. That's something I didn't cover with the fermentation, is where that tobacco on the stalk comes from that priming, going from the bottom cut to the top cut. You have 4 layers. So you have Velato at the bottom, Seco, Visus, and at the top you have Ligero, right? Now those are the post-fermentation grades. So that's more of a texture and intensity selection process. But the different areas on the stalk itself is going to be that Uno y Medio at the bottom, 1.5. Then you have Centro Largo, so center large, Centro Corto is center short, and then up top is the Corona. Sometimes priming and grades are referred to interchangeably, but they are two different things. So you have, let's say, Centro Largo, so the second segment up on the stalk. That could go into fermentation, but it could end up being one of 3 different grades depending on what happens during fermentation. So you could have Velato, Seco, or Visus, but that's going to be dictated once the fermentation is done. And I say all that to say the type of grade it is post-fermentation and it goes into aging will help determine how long that tobacco needs to be aged, and then what that is going to do in terms of the final blend once that tobacco is selected. So there's a lot of different variables going on at all times, which is And all of these go into blend maintenance and making sure you have consistent flavors from one harvest to the next, 1 year, one box to the next for a particular blend. So let's say you have a Visus grade. So you have that Velado Seco Visus, third one up, and that's going to have a lot more character to it than that Seco. It's going to need a little bit more time to age as well because it's a stronger flavor profile. And because of that, you might need a couple extra years to get it to the point where it's going to be flavorful enough without having too much oomph to it if you want a more Davidoff style blend, which again, balance. You want flavor, but you want balance, you want delicacy, you want nuance in there as well. So that is all that very climate controlled, confined area that's more like the spirits. And then once you have the final product, now we're talking wine. Because once you take that spirit out of a barrel, you put it in glass, it is done. Right? Because a lot of that character is coming from that barrel. But once you're at a final product, just like wine, it can continue to mature and evolve and develop. Very much like cigars, that's why you need to have a humidor and make sure they're maintained properly. Because you don't want that tobacco to go bad and you want that blend to still do its thing. And there's a lot to be said for aged tobacco once it's a cigar, but you don't know when it is at its peak until you consume it, just like wine.
So that's fascinating. So the higher up the stalk, the stronger the flavor profile becomes. Is that?
Yeah.
Did I hear that right?
Yes.
Yeah. That right? So
yeah, there are additional variables that go into that, but generally speaking, that's the methodology.
Yeah, just as a generality. So, and is that true regardless of the harvesting method? So the method you were talking about earlier, where you take the lower leaves first and then a couple days later take the next level so that they can develop more evenly, right? Fighting for less of the nutrients in the plant when the lower leaves come off. Does that help the upper? So my thought would have been the lower leaf. So the more the leaf develops, the smoother it becomes. That's like where my intuition is going, is the less nutrients the leaf gets, the harsher or stronger the flavors are going to be in it because they're more concentrated. Is that?
No. So one of the things when you're doing that priming, so those lower leaves have to grow much larger and more quickly because they're fighting for sunlight against those leaves up top. So they have to grow a lot larger and faster, so they're a lot thinner as well. And those are also the first that are picked, so they don't have as much time to develop some of those flavors and get thick. There's so much energy more so on just getting large enough to get rain and sun, or water and sun. Right. So once you start pulling those off the bottom, you get to the top, they're already getting more direct sunlight, so they don't have to grow as big. So now they're growing thicker. So as they grow thicker, they have a lot more character to them. Even wind plays into it. As a tobacco plant is dealing with wind, sometimes you can have 6+ foot tall plants. They can get pretty big depending on the varietal. So they're getting beat around, and because of that type of action going on, that also helps develop the thickness of the tobacco because it's protecting itself. So all of this is going into the development of flavor because nutrients have to be shuttled up there so it can grow in such a way where it's able to protect itself. So if you're stalk cutting, and since we don't stalk cut, my knowledge base is a little bit less thorough, but from what I understand, even those lower leaves, since they're not being pulled early, they actually leave those on longer so that those upper leaves have time to develop as well. So you get a little bit more out of those lower leaves from stalk cut because they are staying on the stalk much longer than if they were being primed.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. And the comparison here in my knowledge base again is clustering on a wine vine. So
Yeah,
if you take a grapevine, depending on the winery, some will only allow 2 clusters per vine to grow, so that the sugars in each of the berries can be more concentrated, as opposed to your cheaper wine, which or your cheaper, at least farmer in the grape industry, right, is trying to produce. Yeah, they're trying to produce for weight, and so they want as big a berries to grow and as many clusters per vine to grow, because they're selling weight per acreage that they have to grow. So, and you get very, very different characteristics out of it. The best wineries I visited are doing exactly that. They are saying, we only want a certain size berry to grow. We only want 2 clusters per vine. Or per arm of the vine. We're going to pick it at this certain amount of acidity or sugar that develops in the grape, and that may be a smaller berry. It may have less yield in terms of the juice they get out of it, but the wine they make, that's part of why the wine they make it makes it cost $200-$300 a bottle at the end of the day. So,
and I think Sauternes, and I'm going to try to use a little bit of my wine knowledge. I just recently got my WSET 1 for wine. I'm going to try to lean on this a little bit. Sauternes are very much that way. So Sauternes are left, those grapes are left on to the point where they're overripe, and those they can actually burst. They'll burst a little bit, and then as they start to dry up, the liquid inside starts to dry up. You're having less liquid and more sugar from the overripeness, so you're getting much smaller yield out of it, but it is going to be a very, very sweet and expensive wine.
Yep. Yeah. So Sauternes, especially being, a French wine, it's named for the region it comes from. Other similar wines, just dessert wines in that kind of space, they call ice wine. I don't know if have you heard that term?
They let them freeze.
Right. They leave it on well past when they harvest everything else, into the colder months. So the berries are really developing the most sugar inside of them. And that creates a higher alcohol content because there's more sugar for the yeast to eat, and they let the fermentation go longer, and that's what gets you your very sweet, kind of more oily mouthfeel to the wine, which is lovely with desserts, which are your typically sweeter pastries and cakes and things like that. So you need, if the food is sweeter than the wine itself, it's going to dampen the flavor of the wine. So you need the wine to actually have more sugar to be able to pair with that sweeter food as it goes.
Right.
And it's fascinating. But you get a lot of Sauternes, the best Sauternes in the world. You're buying them in splits or half bottles.
Yeah,
because one, the alcohol content is higher. You need much less of a pour. It's more of a sipper, than it is a drinking wine, and they get expensive.
Price points.
Price points. Quite expensive.
Yeah. There's a quote. It's not directly from Zeno, but it's kind of an paraphrasing, and then Dr. Schneider was also played into this. But eat less, but eat the best. Drink less, but drink the best. Smoke less, but smoke Davidoff.
Smoke the best. Smoke that. Yeah, I love it. That's a good quote. Awesome. Well, I mean, we've covered a lot of the process. Anything else about the process we should know at this point? We haven't really talked about rolling and wrappers. And I'd love to know more about that. But but before I kind of want to wrap up the educational piece, and then just get into a little bit about you and talking about gentlemanly things and your belief on why cigars are gentlemanly things. But before we jump to that section, and let's just wrap up the education. If there's anything else, again, high level, we actually went pretty deep, I think, today, and I loved it. Awesome.
We definitely got nerdy. One thing, so I had mentioned earlier, our vertical integration mentality is crop to shop. It's not crop to warehouse. So once we get our shipment coming in from the Dominican Republic, it gets to the port of Tampa, it comes over here to our headquarters, our U.S. headquarters in Pinellas Park, Florida. Our exclusivity, our selection process, our particularity, if you will, does not end here. So I mentioned we had fewer than 300 Davidoff accounts around the country. We're very, very selective when it comes to who is able to represent the Davidoff brand, who is able to sell our products. So it's a very, very big deal for a shop to be able to present that Davidoff logo. They have that sticker that says Davidoff Appointed Merchant on it. They have the large white shop in shop that has the all of our schedule of goods, all of our products in there. That takes years to get to. That's not something an account can just contact one of our customer success managers and say, hey, I want Davidoff. I'm going to write you a check. Bing, bang, boom, done. We're very, very particular. We start them out with our other brands. They have to grow into that. And so if you find a retailer that is a Davidoff Appointed Merchant, you can know that they know their cigars. They do what it takes to make sure that they have the product maintained properly, represented properly, and definitely support those individuals because they are really, really good retailers. They know what they're doing. They have become business partners of ours. And one of the things I'll also say about Davidoff is we really do go above and beyond in terms of our relationship with our business partners, our retailers. So we want to make sure that they have whatever tools possible to make sure they have a great experience with us, but also so their consumers have a great experience with Davidoff in their store. So that was how we actually met, was when we were at Cigar Mojo and we were able to do our experience. It's not just, hey, cut and light. It's not just buy X, get X. It is, we want you to have an experience and enjoy your time beautifully filled once again, to be able to understand what Davidoff means, but also what it means for the retailer just to have that product there.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm glad you clarified that. It makes me, I could see the exact comparison in our business. And my first guest on this show was Luc Mays from the House of Dormay. They're a French fabric mill that's fifth, entering its sixth generation of family ownership, going all the way back to the mid 1850s. That's the way they approach it, and they approached it with us the same way. We started with one book, two books. Now we have their whole collection, including Vicuña, which is an extremely rare fiber and fabric, and that book maybe has 20 in the country. So wow. We have quite a few where that's how we are in the clothing world, and I love that you guys are approaching it the same way. If I were a cigar shop, I would certainly want to be a partner with you guys. Understanding what that partnership is like from my side in the clothing world, it would be the same thing for me. And Cigar Mojo does an awesome job. I'll give them a huge plug because they've got a couple locations around Philly. They started with one, and I have expanded to one or two other ones. And the guys there are awesome. They're friendly. Their setup is super sharp, but to be a partner with you guys and then throw the events and activations like we had to, for us to have the chance to meet it was a special night, right? It was a memorable night. It was a story I could talk about for a long time. And my colleague, coworker, it's not a coworker. He's actually a client of mine, but we were in a business group together, entrepreneurs organization. It just further solidified my relationship with him and his relationship with me, and all the other guys that were there enjoying that night. We all shared that experience. So and just to fill people in, you brought a couple chocolates that were whole nother world. You get into the making of chocolates, and maybe we'll have a Swiss chocolate maker come on the show at some point. But
it'll be fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, what you guys brought, those chocolates were awesome. And then to see how the flavor of the cigar changed, with a bite of chocolate, so take a puff and then take a bite and then take another puff, and the flavors that came out of it opened a world for me. I never played with cigars that way before. And the pairing you guys put together was awesome. And I picked up some of those anniversary cigars that night, and they are
good
aging in my humidor here behind me. And I can't wait to find the right time to enjoy the first of them at some point.
Well, let me tell you this real quick, especially if you have multiple, I would say go ahead and have one. Because number one, they are spectacular right now. They are so good. And that way, it also gives you a little bit of a reference point as it continues to age and you spend that time. You know what to compare it to, right? But actually, to quote Michael Herklots from Ferio Tego, don't wait for the occasion for the cigar. Make the cigar the occasion as well. And to be able to again enjoy a cigar with intent and really get as much out of it, that is creating that memorable moment. Instead of having to wait for that moment, make the cigar the occasion too. And I'm not saying go smoke everything you have right now, but also time, let's get back to time, is not guaranteed. And you can't buy more of it. Already said that. So enjoy that and use that cigar as a way to just elevate that time and enjoy it.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's great advice. And I will probably break one out. You guys were kind enough to include one that night, and I was lucky enough to split a case with the guy that invited me. I think they had 2 cases there, and I very quickly said, "Give me a." And other people were looking to buy them at the end of the night, and they were gone. And so I feel very fortunate to have that. I think I have 6 or 7 sticks, in my inventory, and that's plenty, to taste one now and taste another 6 months or a year down the road. And if I go at every year period, that's 7 years to compare how it's aged.
And that's the thing about Davidoff limited editions is everybody's looking for them. So when you see them, get them, because that is it.
Yep. Yeah. So, and I mean, to compare that to the cigar we had that night will be really interesting as well, because that was that night was my first ever Davidoff cigar as well. Awesome. This has been great. So I asked you the night we met, what, in your opinion, right? Because we talked already in this conversation, there's cheap cigars, there's expensive cigars, there's cigars that are mass produced and cigars that are made with Davidoff care. At what threshold does a cigar become a gentlemanly thing? Because somebody walking around smoking a Swisher Sweet, plenty of people walk down the street, and I smell them all the time on the sidewalk. I wouldn't say that they're gentlemen, in the way that they're enjoying that. So give me your definition. What's the threshold?
So I'm of the opinion, and I think I remember a little bit about what we had talked about that night, I believe. It's not necessarily the cigar itself that's making it gentlemanly, right? So there's a cigar for every occasion, and there's an occasion for every cigar. So it's perfectly okay if you're enjoying a less expensive cigar. It's perfectly okay if you're enjoying a more expensive cigar. It is more so the individual that makes that enjoyment gentlemanly, and how you appreciate it. And when you enjoy with intent and you take the time and you really try to appreciation, I think, is a huge part of a gentleman's character, is to be able to, I think it's important to not only seek out quality, but also to provide quality with whatever you're doing. And so when you're appreciating something with a level of gratitude, regardless of the price point or what it is. So in this case, cigars. If you are taking the time to appreciate the craftsmanship, the artisanship, the care, the love, the blood, sweat, and tears that goes into something, I think that is what establishes that gentlemanly quality in terms of that moment and that experience.
I love it. Yeah. And you said that night, time, you said intention, right? What is the intent with which it's enjoyed? And I shared with you as we were, getting ready to hit go on this, that I've been using that in a lot of conversations. I think it applies across so many different areas. When something's done with intention and care and detail, it elevates the end product that you get out of it, and it elevates the enjoyment and it elevates the experience that's created. So, awesome. What, other than cigars, how do gentlemanly things? How does the art of living like a gentleman show up in your life?
Again, one of the things I mentioned was trying to seek out quality and provide quality. So, yes, especially for me in particular, flavors. So, I don't just enjoy cigars. I enjoy whiskey. I enjoy wine. I didn't know quite as much about wine, so as I said, I got my WSET 1 for wine. I'm trying to push myself to learn a little bit more, and it's not only for personal purposes, but also from a professional standpoint. I feel like I'd be able to speak better to wine pairings or just wine enjoyment, because a lot of people who enjoy cigars, they also enjoy wines. Same thing with food. I'm a foodie. I love food. I love great food. I love expensive food. I love inexpensive food. I love experiencing culture through food. So always was a big fan of Anthony Bourdain, for example, because a lot of what he was doing was taking people to places they'd never seen before, experiencing food they weren't familiar with, and then understanding how they got to that point. A lot of times there are dishes out there that are so culturally based. It's actually because of more the type of sustenance they needed or the tools they had to create that. There was the stories attached to every step of what that dish was. It's the people who were behind it, not only the consumption of it. And it's very similar to, ad nauseum, we've talked about the level of care and the stories that go towards the tobacco. A lot of longer lasting cigar brands, especially if they have a name, a family name attached to them, a lot of times there are stories about the trials and tribulations those families went through just to be able to share their true life's passion with the world. So there's a lot of stories out there to really understand what a brand is. That's why, especially in marketing, a lot of marketers, they say they're storytellers. That's for a reason. That's very, very real. And so, especially when I can find ways in my life to put more flavors together with intent, thinking about what this wine is giving me, what this cigar is giving me, what this food is giving me, and then how to find new and creative ways to put them together and elevate that experience, you're making better use and more quality use of that quality time, again, for yourself or with others. And I think that's probably one of the biggest things for me is to try to better myself, educate myself on all these different aspects, because it's so much more than consumption.
I love that answer. And I'm sitting here thinking, well, what else can I enjoy cigars with? I've learned whiskey and food. I've learned wine and food. I'm a foodie myself. And I think you said something in there that is really key. Expensive food, inexpensive food. Both can be amazing, right? It's not about the price point that's behind it. Understanding the price point and why it costs what it is will help you understand that you're making smart decisions to get the enjoyment you want out of it. But not just stopping at price as a judgment, which most of us do because we're moving so fast through our day that that's typically the first. All right, well, that's the scale we can compare things on, right?
Sure.
And I would never consider paying that much for a steak, but a Japanese A5 Wagyu steak, that has been dry aged for 45 days is well worth the $185 that they're going to charge for a 6-ounce portion.
Right. It might, the finances behind it, as I said at the beginning, that might dictate frequency.
Correct. Right. Yeah. And I think that's a good point too. Yeah.
But yeah, if you're able to really say, okay, I'm going to justify this price point to myself by saying I'm going to splurge. It is a special occasion. It is something, just time. I have the opportunity right now to be able to enjoy this. Take advantage of that. It doesn't have to be only judged by that, but if you have that opportunity, take it. And that's another thing that's at my core ethos is I feel like luck is when preparedness meets opportunity, because opportunities present themselves to everybody so many times every single day. Whether you know they are opportunities or not, that's irrelevant, because when you see an opportunity as an opportunity, you have to make yourself prepared to take advantage of it. So the luckier a person is, maybe they put the work in to make sure they were prepared to take advantage of something when it was put in front of them.
Yeah. And I love that. I think that actually is a great way to bring us to a close, because I'll say I feel lucky to have met you, and that we were able to have a follow-up conversation here today. And that was me making the right relationships to be in the room when you were there, you guys making the right relationships to be, to have a dealer that's a partner, that was there. And there was an opportunity that existed. And, I saw the opportunity because I was doing this, and I said, hey, I'm starting this show and this is what it's about. And I think, we could have a great conversation about it. And here we've gone on, probably well past about an hour and a half. When I say when we started, I said, well, let's shoot for 30 to 40 minutes.
40 minutes. Let's see what happens.
It's okay. And we'll see how it comes out. But, if I didn't ask you and if I didn't see the opportunity, to do this, we wouldn't have been sitting here having this conversation. And, and I've got to know you a little bit better, even through this. And I'm sitting here thinking, well, when are we going to hang out? And you got to come back to Philly, and I want to make you a suit and show you my world, and I've appreciated seeing your world and all that stuff. So
November.
Okay, well let's put it on the calendar. When you come back, let's get together. We'll hang out. Maybe that'll be the occasion, to smoke one of those anniversary cigars and sit down.
You mentioned Union League, because I'll be doing a cigar dinner at Union League on November 10th.
Okay, perfect. I'll put it on my calendar. I don't think I've seen that announced yet, but if it's open to all members, which usually they are, I'll make sure I get on that, and let's schedule some time while you're in town outside of the event as well.
Love it.
Yeah, perfect. Any final thoughts you want to share?
Well, first and foremost, I'd love to do another episode. I think we have way more to talk about.
Yeah.
But I'd say gratitude is kind of one point I'd like to bring up. I know that's another very gentlemanly thing, in my opinion, is gratitude. It's the appreciation for what we have in our hands. It's appreciation of the situations in which we find ourselves. It's an appreciation for the journey we've been on, we've undertaken. We all have successes. We all have failures. I'd be remiss if I didn't share this little maxim my mom used to tell me when I was a kid. And of course, when you're a kid, you don't have an appreciation for anything. And over time, it's like, oh, you know what? Maybe my parents were right. And my mom always used to tell me, when you lose, don't lose the lesson. And that helps you really gain an appreciation for those failures to be able to grow and become better. And it's very gentlemanly to continue to refine and polish and just take that extra step to become more learned or become better in any way, shape, or form. And the successes are great. They're great to enjoy in the moment, but our real growth comes from when we aren't as successful. And to be able to take that as a jumping off point is as gentlemanly as you can be. So be grateful for everything you have, everything you've gone through, positive, negative, or indifferent. And that's just that little last nugget I'll leave everybody with.
I love that. And it makes me think of, you can't always control what happens to you, but you control how you react to what happens to
Yes.
you.
Yeah.
Right.
Life
you
is
can control that reaction.
Life is 20% what happens to you, 80% how you react.
Yeah. Yeah. And, and I think the more learned you are, the more experience you have, you start to look at things with gratitude. You find the gratitude in whatever happens to you, as opposed to finding, the flip side of that, which is contentment, anger, maybe self-doubt, other elements that would be, would carry a negative connotation to them.
Right.
You can choose to look at it that way, or you can choose to look at it as, what can I learn from this? And I said in another show recently, I encourage my employees to fail. I actually tell them on their first day, I expect you to fail. I want you to fail. Just don't fail at the same thing twice. I always learn something from it. I like how you phrased it. I might have you say it again, right? You may lose, but don't lose the lesson, I think is how you phrased it, right?
Yeah. When you lose, don't lose the lesson. Yeah.
When you lose, don't lose the lesson. I go back to being a kid. I played travel soccer. My entire first season of travel soccer, we didn't win a single game. My entire second
character building.
My entire second season, we won 2 games, and then the third season, we won the championship. So, I think that built a lot of character in me as a kid. 8, 9, 10-year-old, kind of range, where you want to be winning, but I had coaches along the way that I'm grateful for, because they taught me how to not look at the results, but look at the growth. And we certainly grew. You look at 2 years later winning a championship, and you're there.
Certainly.
And those are lessons that kind of get ingrained. When you learn them that early in childhood, they solidify themselves without you knowing that they're there. And it becomes part of who you become as an adult. So I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for your time. Thank you for spending it with us, for educating. Definitely, we could talk about a follow-up, because there's a lot more to talk about, and a lot more personal stuff, I think, to talk about the art of living like a gentleman, and how you do it, how I do it, and where we meet in the middle. And I appreciate everything you shared. I think I learned a lot, and I think our audience will learn a lot, and hopefully you learned some stuff in the conversation as well. And we'll earmark that date for November 10th when you're up here. Maybe the round 2 will be in person together. That'd
be even better. I'd love that.
Yeah. Cool. Awesome. Well, Alex, thank you so much. Everybody that stayed this long, appreciate your time and your attention. Hopefully you got a lot out of this. Remember, subscribe, share this with your friends. Get the word out. This is the Gentlemanly Things. The show is not about how to be a gentleman, but it's about the art of living like one. And we explore that one conversation at a time. This has been a fantastic conversation with Alex Weghorn, the U.S. lead ambassador for Davidoff Cigars. And we thank him for his time. And we will see you next week on the next episode. Take care, everybody. Enjoy the week.